Immigration driven by NGOs and international organizations has been destroying many countries in recent years, to the point of completely ruining them. I'm sure you are already expecting some countries on this list, but there are countries that will come as a huge surprise. Countries where everything was working well until they became almost overrun by immigrants. And you don't need to go anywhere to see this. In this very video, you will see how immigration has completely changed the course of each country. Starting at number 10, we have Ireland. A nation once known for tight-knit communities and rich cultural traditions now finds itself in a social experiment gone wrong. Walk through Dublin at night, and you'll witness a transformation that would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago. The streets tell a story of disorder, conflict, and citizens who no longer feel safe in their own capital. The influx has been rapid and overwhelming. Ireland welcomed immigrants without adequate infrastructure or integration programs. What followed was predictable. Reports of violence have skyrocketed. Neighborhoods that once left their doors unlocked now install security cameras. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. When Irish citizens protested after an immigrant attacked children at a school with a knife, the government labeled the protesters as extremists. The attacker received leniency from courts, with judges citing cultural differences. Meanwhile, an Irish teacher sits in prison for his 2nd year because he refused to use preferred pronouns for a student. A violent attack on children gets compassion. A teacher standing by his principles gets jail time. This is a system that protects outsiders while punishing its own citizens. Irish people are watching their country transform, and when they speak up, they're silenced. At number 9, we find Canada, under Justin Trudeau's leadership. This once proud nation built by pioneers has morphed into something its founders wouldn't recognize. Trudeau hasn't just changed policies, he's engineered a complete cultural revolution, systematically replacing national identity with what he calls diversity, but what many Canadians experience as erasure. Toronto, Canada's largest city, offers the clearest picture. Walk through its neighborhoods and you'll notice the Canadian identity is fading rapidly. In many areas, English is barely spoken. Communities exist in complete isolation, separated by language, religion, and values. This isn't the multicultural success story that politicians sell. It's fragmentation masquerading as progress. Look at Canada's national football team. The roster tells you everything about demographic replacement. The traditional Canadian is disappearing through deliberate policy. While Hungary's Viktor Orban encourages his citizens to take pride in being Hungarian, Trudeau promotes pride in everything except being Canadian. Unless you're part of the approved identity groups that align with his progressive agenda, the pride parades, the flag redesigns, the constant apologies for Canada's history, it's all part of the same strategy: dismantle the old identity to make room for the new. Young Canadians grow up learning to be ashamed of their heritage while celebrating everyone else's. The result is a nation without a core, held together only by empty platitudes about tolerance. Number 8 brings us to Portugal, where mass immigration has created parallel societies. The Portuguese culture still exists in the food and traditions, but walk the streets of Lisbon or Porto, and you'll see the transformation clearly. Multiple distinct groups now occupy the same territory without real integration. There's the African community from former Portuguese colonies. Their presence is substantial and growing. Then you have Brazilians, arriving in massive numbers. These groups at least share the Portuguese language. But then there are the Indians, arriving in waves and rapidly gaining citizenship. They're becoming the new Europeans, the new Portuguese, whether the native population agrees or not. Add to this a significant Middle Eastern population, and you have cultural dissolution. These aren't people who came to become Portuguese. They came for economic opportunity while maintaining their own identities, languages, and social structures. Portugal is becoming just a geographic location, not a nation in any meaningful sense. The Portuguese government celebrates this as progress, but they ignore the reality. a native population feeling like strangers in their own country, competing for housing and services with endless newcomers who have no connection to Portuguese history. At number 7 appears the Netherlands, a country that for years has been torn between recognizing the effects of mass immigration and remaining trapped in policies of the past. Although part of the population expresses a desire to take the country back, the social transformation is so deep that many see it as almost impossible to reverse. Amsterdam, once a symbol of liberal tolerance and Dutch culture, is presented as an example of this change. Public displays of Muslim religious practices in the streets, perceived not as private devotion but as a cultural assertion. According to the text, the embrace of tolerance has created parallel societies with their own norms, in conflict with Dutch laws and customs, affecting women, homosexuals, and freedom of expression. The argument is reinforced with demographic and political references, especially among young people, pointing to a future in which traditional Dutch identity would disappear. Added to this is criticism of progressive currents that, according to the author, accelerate this process, exemplified by the Miss Netherlands 2023 contest, where the top prizes were awarded to transgender individuals, interpreted as a loss of traditional cultural and social reference points. Belgium ranks number 6 as an example of how immigration without clear standards can erode a country. Operating within its borders is the Macro Mafia, considered one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking organizations in Europe, made up primarily of criminals of Moroccan origin, along with others from the Middle East and Africa. These are not isolated incidents, but organized crime that has firmly established itself and exercises real control in certain areas of the country. The decline of public order is visible even in everyday spaces. Beaches that were once family-friendly destinations have turned into scenes of unrest, with groups of immigrant youth involved in fights, intimidation, and chaos. Rather than adapting to Belgian norms, they impose behaviors brought from their countries of origin. Authorities appear unable or unwilling to restore order, creating a widespread sense of impunity. Brussels, the nation's capital and the seat of the European Union, reflects this demographic shift in its most extreme form. In many neighborhoods, it is difficult to find native Belgians, and newcomers do not assimilate quietly, but instead maintain their own social rules and codes of conduct. This loss of identity is also symbolized by the national under-17 football team, where most players lack traditional Belgian roots and do not have Dutch or French as their first language. From this perspective, it is not diversity, but cultural and national replacement. 5. Countries in critical condition where the damage may be irreversible. Number 5 is Sweden, a nation that sold its Viking heritage and Nordic identity for the illusion of moral superiority. Sweden didn't just accept immigrants. It embraced cultural suicide with enthusiasm, believing that tolerance and generosity would create harmony. Instead, it created a disaster that serves as a warning to the world. The statistics are undeniable. Rape rates in Sweden increased by 500% following the arrival of mass immigration from the Islamic world and Africa. 500%. This isn't a statistical anomaly. This is a fundamental change in society, a direct result of importing people from cultures with radically different views on women, sexuality, and consent. Sweden was a safe, homogeneous society in the 1970s and 1980s. Sexual violence was rare. Women could walk anywhere at any time without fear. Then came the wave of immigrants from countries where women have fewer rights, where honor culture dominates, and where Western women are often viewed as immoral and therefore fair targets. Swedish authorities knew this would happen. They were warned. They did it anyway. But Sweden's transformation isn't limited to Muslims and Africans. There's also a massive Indian population arriving and changing the demographic landscape. Look at Sweden's national cricket team. It's almost entirely composed of Indian immigrants and their descendants. Cricket, a sport with no Swedish history, now has a Swedish national team that isn't Swedish. The Swedish government celebrates this as evidence of progressive values. They refuse to publish crime statistics by ethnicity because the results would be too damaging. They prosecute citizens for social media posts critical of immigration, while gang violence with grenades and automatic weapons has become routine in Malmö and Stockholm. Sweden chose ideology over reality, and now Swedish culture exists. Only in museums, we have the only Latin American country on this list. The Dominican Republic is experiencing a slow-motion invasion from Haiti that threatens to erase the country entirely. This isn't hypothetical. This is happening right now. And without drastic action, the Dominican Republic as a nation will cease to exist. 30 years ago, the Dominican Republic was distinctly Dominican in culture, appearance, and identity. Today, massive numbers of Haitians cross the border illegally every single day. In many areas, there are now more Haitians than Dominicans. This isn't immigration in the traditional sense. This is population displacement. Schools are filling with Haitian children. Hospitals are overwhelmed with Haitian patients, especially pregnant women who cross the border specifically to give birth and receive free health care. All of this is funded by Dominican taxpayers, who watch helplessly as their country transforms around them. They pay for the schools, the hospitals, the infrastructure, and then watch as Haitians take the spots that should go to Dominicans. The demographic graphs tell a frightening story. If current trends continue, Dominicans will become a minority in their own country within decades. The Dominican language, culture, and identity will be diluted and eventually lost. This isn't natural demographic change. This is the result of porous borders, weak enforcement, and international pressure that treats any attempt at border control as racism. Dominicans are angry. They see what's happening. They want their government to act. But international organizations, NGOs, and foreign governments apply pressure to keep the borders open. The Dominican Republic is being sacrificed on the altar of open borders ideology, and the Dominican people are expected to accept their own erasure with a smile. This should be a warning to every nation. Border sovereignty isn't optional. It's existential. Germany, a once great nation that has deliberately destroyed itself. Germany had centuries of achievement in science, philosophy, music, and industry. It rebuilt itself after World War II into an economic powerhouse. And then it decided to commit national suicide through immigration. Multiple videos could be made about Germany's collapse. The evidence is overwhelming. Germany didn't just accept immigrants. It created programs to help them integrate in the most perverse ways. There are government-funded programs that teach immigrant men how to flirt with and have sex with German women. The German government uses taxpayer money to teach foreign men how to pursue German women. This isn't compassion. This is facilitating the displacement of native Germans. Muslim communities in Germany have taken over entire neighborhoods. Sharia law operates in practice, if not officially, in areas where police rarely enter. German women are harassed for not covering up. German customs and traditions are mocked and rejected, and German authorities do nothing, paralyzed by guilt over the past and fear of being called racist. In 2019, Germany selected a 39-year-old Iranian woman as Miss Germany. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. The representative of German beauty, the face of Germany to the world, isn't German. And this was celebrated as progress. Meanwhile, posters in Muslim neighborhoods insult white German women, claiming moral superiority and mocking German culture. Look at Germany's national football teams. The under-17 team shows the future clearly. 7 of 11 starters are not ethnically German. The team representing Germany has become a multicultural project with no connection to German heritage or identity. Germany opened its doors to over 1 million refugees in 2015 alone. Chancellor Angela Merkel made this decision without consulting the German people, without preparation, and without any realistic plan for integration. The result was predictable: mass sexual assaults, increased crime, welfare dependency, and social fragmentation. But admitting the policy failed would require confronting uncomfortable truths, so German leaders doubled down instead. The Germany that gave the world Beethoven, Goethe, and Einstein is dying. What replaces it will carry the name Germany, but it won't be German. A country that could easily rank first: England. Once the heart of the greatest empire in history, it is portrayed here as a warning of cultural surrender. The England of history, literature, and tradition survives largely as a tourist facade, while its national identity steadily erodes. England helped pioneer many of the progressive ideologies blamed for weakening the West: radical multiculturalism, rejection of national identity, and constant apologies for historical success. According to this view, the country is now suffering the consequences. In London, native English people are minorities in many neighborhoods. Boroughs such as Tower Hamlets and Newham are majority foreign-born, and traditional English culture is being replaced by a fragmented mix of communities with little shared identity beyond location. The Muslim population in England and the wider UK is described as large and rapidly growing, with mosques expanding at a fast pace. Islam is projected to become the dominant religion within decades. Unlike past waves of immigration, many newcomers are said to maintain separate identities and expect England to adapt to them. Authorities are accused of enabling this shift, harshly policing speech critical of immigration, while failing to act decisively against grooming gangs, most notoriously in the Rotherham scandal, where systemic abuse of English girls was ignored for years. This perceived loss of identity is symbolized by the under-17 national football team, where most players are not ethnically English. Critics argue this reality cannot be discussed without accusations of racism. England, once a global power, is now depicted as unable to control its own streets, with various criminal networks operating openly while native English citizens are told to celebrate diversity as their country slips away. Now we arrive at number 1, France. Not the France of history, the Enlightenment, art, and revolution, but a country portrayed as having lost its identity. What remains is described as a geographic space that has become more African and Muslim than European and Christian. In many areas, this transformation is said to be complete. Cities like Paris, Marseille, and Lyon are depicted as places where traditional French culture survives mainly as a tourist display, while the population shaping the future no longer reflects France's historical identity. France is described as absorbing massive immigration from Africa, the Muslim world, and increasingly India, with newcomers maintaining separate identities rather than adopting French values. Under President Emmanuel Macron, the country is accused of embracing radical progressive ideologies, symbolized by the 2024 Paris Olympics opening ceremony, which critics say mocked Christianity and highlighted everything except French heritage. The national football team is cited as further evidence of identity loss, with the starting lineup presented as entirely African in origin, framed not as integration, but replacement. According to this view, crime is rising rapidly while debate is being suppressed. Publishing crime statistics by ethnicity is illegal. Neighborhoods are described as being beyond police control, and citizens are punished for speaking out, while immigrant criminals receive lenient treatment. France is presented as the end result of open border ideology, a nation that retained its buildings and symbols but lost its people. The broader warning goes beyond France, arguing that countries that prioritize ideology over national survival risk losing their identity permanently. Now it's your turn. What do you think about immigration? If you ruled a country, would you allow it? I'll read your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.